Hey, and welcome back. And in this lesson, we're going to look at how to add fog or volumetric lighting to your scene. So first of all, let's start by deleting our light and our camera as we usually do. And this time I want to add a floor as well. So I'm going to do Shift A, Mesh, Plane to create a plane. And then I'm going to scale it up. So press S on the keyboard and just scale it up. And S again, scale it up, something like that. And then I want to move my cube so it's sitting on top of the floor. So I'm going to press G and then Z to move it in the Z axis or the Z axis. And then I'm going to hold in Control to snap and then just snap it so it's right above that floor plane, something like that. Next, we want to add a spotlight. So I'm going to do Shift A, and this time I'm going to go to Light and then Spotlight. Okay, so it's added this spotlight right here at the bottom, and I'm going to move that spotlight up. So I'm going to press G and then Z, move it up, and maybe something like that. So we have this spotlight shining from the top down. So if we render this now, I'm going to go to my render view, and I'm going to switch the renderer over to cycles. Okay, so I'm going to go to my renderer and change this over to cycles. And as you can see, it's starting to render and we don't really see anything. I'm going to increase the brightness of this spotlight. So select your spotlight, go to your light properties, and currently it's on 10 watts. So I'm going to increase this to about 400. And now you can see we have that spotlight working. But we can't really see the spotlight. We can just see what it's actually reflecting on, but we can't see any volumetric lighting. And that's what we want to add. So first of all, I want to switch off my world texture or my world HDRI. So I'm going to go to this world properties. And then as you can see, the color is currently set to this gray and the strength is 1. So this is the same place where we add our 360-degree HDRIs. So I'm just going to set the strength to 0 to kind of disable that. So we can see our light a bit better, and there's no other light coming in from the world basically. So we only have this spotlight in the scene. So I'm going to go back to normal flat shading mode or solid mode, and so it's just a little bit faster to work with. So what we need to do is we need to create something with a fog or volumetric material to enable that fog basically. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a cube. So just Shift A, Mesh, and then Cube. And I'm going to scale this cube up quite big. So it's covering this whole area where I want the fog or the volumetric to be in my scene. So I'm going to scale it up, press S, scale it up some more. And then I'm going to move this big cube up. So I'm going to press G, Z, move it up. And just make sure it's kind of covering the whole light and the area of your scene that you want to have fog. So I'm maybe going to expand it a little bit more. So press S again. And this time I just want to scale it in the X and Y, but I want to exclude the Z axis. So what you can do is you can press Shift Z, and that will exclude the Z axis from your scale. So now you can see it's only scaling in the X and the Y direction. So I'm going to maybe make it just a little bit bigger than my floor plane. So now it's covering that entire area. So next we want to apply a specific material to this big cube or this big box. So with this box selected, I'm going to go to my material properties and I'm going to create a new material slot and then a new material. You can give it a name. Maybe let's just call it fog, just to keep things nice and tidy. And now what we want to do is we need to add a specific shader to this box. So first of all, you'll see there's a preview, and if you click on the preview, it will just give you a 3D preview of that material, but we're not interested in that. Underneath that, you have surface. If we minimize that, you'll see that we have volume, and volume is the place where we want to be. But first, we need to disable the surface material because we don't want to apply a surface material to this box. Okay, we only want to apply a volume shader to this box. So under surface, I'm going to expand surface again. And right at the top, you'll see this is the shader that's currently assigned to the surface. And this is a surface shader. It's called Principled BSDF. So I'm going to click there, and then I'm going to go all the way up to the right-hand side, and I'm just going to remove this material completely, or the shader. Remove, and it's going to remove it from surface. You'll see it says surface, none. Now we can minimize that, and then we're going to expand volume. So currently there's no volume shader assigned, so I'm going to click on none. And this time we're going to use the principled volume shader to create that volumetric lighting effect. So principled volume, and this is where we can set all the different properties of that volume. So first of all, what you can see here is color and color attribute, and then density. Now your color and your density, that's probably the two parameters that you will use the most. So first of all, I'm going to set the density to something a little bit less, because 1 is completely dense and then 0 is zero density. So I'm going to set this somewhere in the middle, maybe 0.5. Press enter to set that. And I'm going to leave the color at just a gray color for now. But still, we can't see anything in our screen or on our viewport because we need to go into render view to see the effects. So I'm just going to click on this render view, and remember we are still on using cycles. So now we can kind of see something happening in the middle around there, but the density is quite still too dense. So I'm going to bring this density down to 0.1. So I'm going to click there, 0.1, enter. And now we can start to see our volumetric. So I'm just going to zoom in here slightly and just kind of position the camera or the viewport so we can see. And I'm just going to let that render for a bit. And there you can see, you can start to see the actual volumetric lighting around this spotlight. It kind of looks like a fog or a dust. And this is pretty cool because now you can go and you can change your color. You can maybe make it a little bit blue and play with the density. And you can even add some emission strength to this so that it actually emits some light. So let's say if I increase this to about 0.5. Okay, that's a bit much. 0.01 maybe. Even that's quite strong. So maybe 0.001. And you can see it's actually starting to add light to your scene. So I'm just going to set that back to 0. So you can go in here and you can play with all these different settings and see what they do. But usually color and density, those are the two parameters that you will probably use the most. And then just remember to be in cycles. You can still preview it in Eevee. I'm just going to change my renderer back to Eevee. And you can see some of the volumetric lighting, but it doesn't look that nice. So we can go in here and we can maybe try and change this a little bit. Volume, maybe make the density 0.3. And yeah, it kind of changes the way it looks like, but it's not as nice as using the cycles renderer. So sometimes I will use Eevee just to kind of get a preview of what I'm doing, but then I will always switch over to cycles when I'm kind of doing my final render. So that's how you add fog or volumetric lighting to Blender. I will see you in the next lesson.